Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We proceed to chapter 6 in our syllabus, that is project management. This chapter is available in chapter 8 in your textbook. First, let's see what is meant by a project. A project is an interrelated set of activities that has definite starting and ending points towards achieving a unique outcome. Okay, a project is an interrelated set of activities. So what is meant by interrelated? Interrelated here means something that is related to one another. Okay, so project is an interrelated set of activities, meaning that a project will have a lot of activities. Activities here means tasks, tugas. Okay, there are a lot of tasks to be done, and these tasks are related to one another. So that is the interrelated activities, which has definite starting. Definite here means exact starting point and ending point. So basically, project is an output to be produced by a company, whereby this project or this output will have a lot of tasks or activities to be performed, and these tasks are related to one another, and this project will have an exact starting point and also an ending point, okay, towards achieving a unique outcome. Okay, the outcome of a project is unique. Okay, what is unique? Unique means something that is unusual. A project is something unique. Unique means something that is different from one another. For example, a project to build a bridge in Semeling. So that is one project, and it is definitely different from a project to build a bridge in Singapore. Even though the project relates to building a bridge, but these two projects are unique with one another in a way that they are different from one another. For this chapter, what we are interested in is actually the project management technique. We are going to focus more on the calculation part, that is the project management technique. There are two techniques commonly applied in managing a project. Untuk menguruskan projek ni, ada dua teknik yang sangat popular to be used, which are the project evaluation and review technique, or in short form it is called as PERT, and the next method or technique is called as critical path method, or CPM. So these two techniques are actually related to one another, and both techniques will be applied at the same time or simultaneously. Okay, you can see how these techniques are applied in the calculation part later on. Okay, in applying these two techniques, the PERT technique and also the CPM technique, what are the things that need to be done? So when we apply these two techniques, what are the analysis to be done actually? So there are altogether 6 analyses to be done by applying PERT technique and also critical path method, or CPM. First is to draw the PERT network diagram. Okay, so the first thing is to draw PERT network diagram. So to draw this PERT network diagram, it is quite it is not complicated, but it is quite confusing. Second is to calculate the earliest event time, or EET, and latest event time, the LET. The next thing to be done is to determine the project completion time, and then to determine the critical path and also the critical activities. Next thing to be done, or analysis to be done, is to calculate the float. Okay, float here has 3 types of float, which will be explained in the next slide. And the last analysis to be done by applying, when we apply PERT and also CPM, is to see the impact on completion time, on the project completion time, if an activity is delayed. Okay, so when we go to the calculation part, then you will understand what is meant by all these 6 items that need to be analyzed. For this slide, okay, I will only explain to you the float, the meaning of float, because you are required to calculate float when it comes to the calculation part later. Float is also under PERT and CPM. So float here means spare time. Maksud float adalah masa lebih, spare time or extra time. And float here is calculated for one particular activity or one particular task. For example, float to calculate float for activity A, float for activity B. So that is meant by float to be calculated for one particular activity. Okay, what you need to understand for float is that there are three types of float. Ada tiga jenis spare time ataupun extra time. The first one is total float, or in short form it is TF. Second is free float, FF, and lastly is the independent float, or IF. Okay, so to understand the three types of float here, so they are actually referring to different situations. So maksud jenis-jenis float ni adalah sebenarnya ianya merujuk kepada situasi spare time yang berbeza. Situasi sahaja. Okay, so what is meant by total float? Total float is a situation where we want to calculate the spare time. Float is spare time or extra time. We want to calculate or we want to see is there any extra time or spare time or not if an activity starts early and finish late. So total float ni adalah bermaksud kita nak mengira ataupun menentukan sama ada tak masa lebih ataupun spare time if satu-satu aktiviti tu kita nak mulakan dia awal, start early, but we want to finish late. Contoh aktiviti A, kita nak kira aktiviti A ni kalau kita mulakan dia awal, start early, but we want to finish late, is there any spare time or extra time or not? So that situation we call it as a total float. For that situation, starts early and finish late. The next type of float is free float. Free float is where we want to calculate is there any spare time or extra time or not if an activity wants to be started early, and also want to be finished early. So free float ni adalah situasi di mana kita nak melihat sama ada masa lebih ataupun tak sekiranya kita nak mulakan aktiviti itu awal, start early, and we want to finish also early. Tadi finish late, finish late, start early, it is total float. Free float, we want to start early, finish early. So, say for example, activity A juga. We want to see activity A ni ada masa lebih ataupun tak sekiranya kita nak mulakan activity A ni awal dan kita nak habiskan dia pun awal. Is there any extra time or not? So, that situation we call it as the free float. And the last type of float is independent float. It is a situation where we want to see or we want to calculate is there any spare time or extra time or not if an activity starts late and finish early. So this one is the opposite of total float. Okay. We want to start late, finish early. Kita nak lihat satu-satu aktiviti tu ada tak masa lebih sekiranya kita nak mulakan dia lambat. Start late, but we want to finish early. Okay, kita nak habis awal. Ada tak masa lebih? Ada tak spare time? So that one is called as an independent float. Okay, for independent float, when we think logically, okay, kita fikir secara logik, kalau kita nak mulakan lambat, start late and finish early, logically, normally we don't have extra time. That is based on our logic thinking. But whatever it is, we cannot use our logic thinking. We have to calculate by applying these formulas. Okay, so these are the formulas for total float, free float, and also independent float. The LET head minus EET tail minus duration. Okay, so when it comes to the calculation part nanti, you will understand what is LET and how to calculate it, and what is EET and how to calculate it, what is the head and also what is the tail. Okay, so these are the explanation for the types of float. So that's all for the theory part for this chapter. please focus more on the calculation part, and please watch the videos on the calculation. Thank you.